So I think in 2024, what most organizations are going to realize is that they need to lean into AI subjects. Generative AI is going to allow them to use data in a far more effective and efficient manner. They can do things in a far more predictive manner across their supply chain and their operations than they ever could before if they're able to apply AI to those subjects. Unfortunately, that requires them to have a stabilized, rationalized data landscape. So they're going to have to get their arms around data and understand how data is used and make sure that their data is accurate. And then, of course, if we're talking about data, we have to talk about cybersecurity. I've got to keep that data secure. If I don't, somebody else is going to use my data in their own AI and be able to disrupt me. So I think those three things are intricately interwoven together and really can't be discussed. One can't be discussed without the other. If I'm talking about generative AI or the use of data to enable my business, I have to talk about cybersecurity and how I'm keeping my data secure. So while a lot of organizations, as they've looked at generative AI, and particularly most of them looked at public models, they've tried to disassociate or separate the interrogation layer from that public model, that public foundational model, so that they're not giving up their data inadvertently by removing their ability to do that. But I think organizations far more need to be concerned about how do they create their own foundational models based on their own data that they can actually reap the benefit of generative AI with their own data sets. But that's really got to be hardened behind a security layer that ensures that that data and the results of the AI that are giving them insights about that data isn't going beyond their perimeter. So I think those three things are really probably in 2024 are going to be top of mind for a lot of organizations. Again, alongside just general environment and cost optimization is going to be generative AI, data, and rationalizing the data layers, and then the cybersecurity that wraps around that to ensure that we're keeping our data and our resulting insights safe. I think the state of affairs in terms of AI and how to create an industrialized, independent AI estate for an enterprise or an enterprise level of AI is still a bit fuzzy. It's a bit fuzzy for most enterprises. I think service providers within the environment, technology service providers, have done a really good job of investing and conducting their research in order to establish their particular way of creating environments for their customers. I think where we probably still lack some really, wealth in terms of how we do that within environments is how do we create those in a way that are ubiquitous? In other words, if I move from say customer to customer or company to company, if I do acquisitions, if I need to do mergers, if we can get to a state where we have an industrial enterprise level AI architecture that is common, that will help all organizations. Because the other thing that we need to recognize is that most organizations today are part of an ecosystem. They don't sit on their own. They're not off behind some firewall with having no connection to partners, no connection to customers, or no connection to the rest of their environment. Their environment is highly enabled by an ecosystem of partners and vendors and other people within the environment. And if we're all using different ways of architecting our foundational AI landscape, I think that can be troublesome. And I think the jury's still a little bit out on what does that look like. I mean, it doesn't have to be, we're not talking about a product here. We're not talking about products or code or capability. We're talking about an architecture that clearly describes in a very common way, in a very standardized way, how these sorts of AI environments should be created at the enterprise level. ISG has done a great job, I think, of working with several key service providers in the technology arena, in the market, to create at least a high-level view of what most enterprises' AI architecture should look like. And I think many service providers are starting to lean into that model, which will help not only service providers be able to work within the same environment, because many of them do work within the same customer environments, but it will also help companies that are a part of these very vast, in some cases, ecosystems where they need to talk to each other so that we can all talk the same language in terms of our use of generative AI.